Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're just having some technical difficulties. We're ready to begin. So first of all, I wrote some things that I want to say today. I just hope everyone is healthy and well, and we're excited to be back sharing another Garage Series program with you. Happy Pride Month. I wish to start by recognizing that I'm coming to you from Vaughan, Ontario. I'm not sure if you know where that is, but we're in the Greater Toronto area. And Toronto is a word that is derived from a Mohawk word. And that word means where there are trees standing in the water. It's always been a meeting place. See, I grew up, if you throw a dart against the wall where I'm sitting now and have a string that shows a 5-mile radius, I grew up in this area. I was born in this area. I grew up in this area, educated through high school, elementary school, university, law school. I had my children born within this area. I live within this area. I spend most of my time with this area, but like all of us, we're not so provincial to be defined. But this is a wonderful area, and I'm connected to this area, and I'm proud of this area, and I'm appreciative of this area. When I was young, we used to walk along the Humber River, and they'd explain to us the true origins of the lands that we share in Canada. And the territory in Vaughan, where I am from, was the lands of the Mississauga of the New Credit First Nation. And it was also shared by the Anishinaabe and the Huron-Wendat First Nations people. I acknowledge that we share these lands, and I appreciate them, and I want to share that. But we must do more. We must not just stop by, we can start by recognizing our appreciation, but we must do more. And as lawyers, we should have all read the report of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and work to implement its recommendations. I'm grateful for this opportunity to work and to live in this territory and to share the lands of peace. Today we'll be talking about transgender identity and rights within the law. We will delve into the rights of transgender individuals, how they are affected by our legal system, and how we as legal practitioners can ensure that these rights are fully realized. Before I introduce our moderator today, Adit Rokash, I wanted to speak to you about what will be coming up in the next few months here in the garage. First, we have another event, another continuing professional development event set for July 14th. Today, we have a wonderful program. We've applied for EDI credit, and once we know whether we've been accredited or not, we'll share that by a mass email. This next event will hopefully also be qualified for an EDI, and we'll focus on the Sentencing and Parole Project. This project is one that has been led by Emily Lamb and Faisal Mirza. And they, as part of this project, have received funding from the Law Foundation of Ontario. This is a non-profit organization that prepares enhanced pre-sentence reports for Black people marginalized by poverty and racial inequality. I've worked with two of the founding directors before in a group called RACE, and these people are these friends of mine. Emily, Faisal, and so many others are on the front lines, and I want to be able to share the hard work that they've been able to accomplish and the real future that we have in rethinking how our justice system works. We also have an exciting and long-awaited website finally coming to fruition. It will include different parts to it, which will include our past Garage series. We have a lot of video content, as well as there will be something simple as a courthouse directory for all courts across Canada. We have another section that we're working on now called How to Practice Law, and that will be a video section as well as include some podcasts. And lastly, we're trying to establish a criminal wiki section. I've spoke about this before, but I'm speaking about it again because we really need your assistance. So please look out for an email message from myself or from Xenia Sefna, who is working with me, an Osgoode student, and trying to put this together. What we're looking for and what we're asking for is your input on various different areas of law and try to get lawyers to adopt a single page. And that's all we want is one page. Basically how to and to describe one area of law. For example, if it was aggravated assault, or if it was, what is the procedure for bringing a Section 8 charter application. Part of our thought process is that the top of the page, there will be a header, and that will highlight the individual who will adopt the page and write it. We'll get a picture, bio, and your contact details. Because the concept is that it will be a first step for young lawyers to look at before they do their research in different areas and help their clients. And it'll also be there for the public. So each page will be created by a lawyer, updated by a lawyer, and eventually available to the public. I'd like to work together on this project. And the key behind it is, as a lawyer, a small firm practitioner out in Vaughan, I can only do so much myself. And I've tried to make changes to the criminal justice system and help individuals. But I know that collectively as a group, and we're a very good group, that we can make changes. And the more we share our information and knowledge amongst each other, the more changes we'll be able to help bring to the criminal justice system. Lastly, we're working on a cross-examination boot camp, and we're hoping to have it running by July or August. And it will be held over Zoom, and there will be 5 to 6 or possibly 7 sessions, 3 hours each. And the concept is that the project will help assist in amplifying your cross-examination skills, or give those that feel as if they are not yet there to get them right there and be ready for cross-examination. We'll provide information and tips and teach you how to prepare cross-examinations for each and every cross-examination that you have after this boot camp. I guarantee you, you will be successful with. We look forward to all that's coming, and we're hoping that as many people as possible watching today's program or part of the Garage Series community can help. Now, I'd like to introduce our moderator. Adit Rokash has been practicing criminal law for 20 years. An assistant Crown attorney, she has conducted a number of significant trials in the provincial and superior courts. She is recognized by her peers as an expert in multiple areas of criminal law, including high-risk offenders, firearms, and robbery prosecutions. Ms. Rokash has been extensively involved in legal education. She's been extensively involved with assistant Crown attorneys, the Defense Bar, and the Ontario Police College. Ms. Rokash has also been actively engaged in the LGBTQ+ community. In 2016 and 17, she mentored a LGBTQ+ youth recovering from a drug addiction as part of her Support Our Youth program at the Sherbourne Health Center. She is the co-founder and director of Wildfire, Lighting Up LGBTQ+ Legal Culture, a nonprofit organization which aims at strengthening the LGBTQ+ community by hosting fundraising events for causes and programs. These events bring together LGBTQ+ individuals and supporters who work within the legal field to connect in a relaxed, social, and enjoyable atmosphere. Thank you for helping out with this event, and the floor is now yours. Adit, we'll get you in 1 sec.
All right, I think people can now hear me, but in terms of video, I'm still not connected.
Okay, here. Do we need to do it over here?
I can't even request.
Okay,
I think I can get it here.
okay.
Just give me 1 sec. Steve?
It's not letting me either.
Technology, gotta love it.
There's no option here to. Oops. What are you getting an error for it, Adi?
I am getting you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it.
Yeah, and that's what I got too, and I had to close
So for
Zoom and start it back
For
up.
the 200 people online, please hold on for 1 sec. We'll figure this out. Just gonna go on mute. My sincere apologies. Give us another 60 seconds or so. I was wondering if the other panelists can try to turn on their video, see if it works. Okay, what are we gonna do? Steve.
Maybe there's no option here.
Can I get them to start? You got one working.
That was me.
Yeah. So why don't we take me down as host?
I'm the host.
Yeah, I'm going to come off.
You're just in as a co-host.
Yeah, I know. Does everybody else start video?
If this won't let us start the video for some reason, should we
Yeah,
be
that's
logging out and logging back in?
Can we log out and do this again? Can we ask all participants to do that and we'll try again?
We'll just have you get logged out quickly and pop back.
Why don't we just try, Adit, if you log out and log back in before and see if that will correct.
Okay, I'll leave the meeting and log
I
right back.
apologize. I'm so embarrassed.
He was doing this earlier and I restarted yours and then.
All right, I've logged back in, but it's the same issue.
I was wondering if Freddie could try to share screen. Maybe you can try that.
Says host disabled screen sharing.
Okay.
Go now. It popped up on this.
Is it working now? Just give us another minute, please. Can you try this screen sharing again? Looks like it may permit it. Yes, okay, that works. If you want to take it down, we've got one thing accomplished. Let's see if we can deal with the rest.
Just looking at this.
Keep your view.
Check cameras. Restart your computer.
You want to try?
You want to restart yours? Yours.
One person said they can.
I don't know if it changes it if you make me the host.
Can you make Adit the host?
We could try.
We're going to try that. If not, I'm going to exit, but just,
I'm now the host.
yes.
Let me see if I can, there we go.
Hey. All of a sudden, this atheist is becoming religious.
Yeah. I think if you do that for everyone, everyone should be able to get their video. So if everyone comes
I
to
think you're
host.
going to have to do it now.
I have.
Oh.
We've
I don't know how to do that.
okay. You want to throw back control to
A
us?
little more screen. There's a little more.
Yep. Yes. What would you like me to do?
Make somebody else and then we'll just pass it along and hopefully. Bobby.
It doesn't, it doesn't ask me to make someone else host. That's
There-
not an option.
If you look on the little dots beside them and when you hover over where it says more,
Yes,
there should be a thing that says make host beside that after.
it does not.
Okay.
See
Do
if
you
you
want to
can
see
do
if
it.
you can make it back to Paul? Because I can't now, I have no, you're the only one that has that
Change
ability.
role to attendee.
No.
It doesn't give me an option anywhere to make myself not the host or to pass it on.
So if you mouse over Paul and there should be an option that says mute or more,
Oh, I see.
beside that more,
Make host, got it. Okay, hold on.
and let's see if your video stays.
It
Okay,
does.
Paul's host, there
Let's
we
see if
go.
we can get it.
So let's do this now with.
Okay, hold on for a second. Let me take. Everybody, I apologize again if we can just hang in there. Freddie, we're going to try to make you the host to see if the video will work on your computer.
That's not me sitting very still with my
No.
cat in front of me.
And then just try and start your video because I think you're still on the screen share.
Okay.
I'm not on the screen share, but video settings, I can see myself. So what you want me to do
The
is,
bottom left corner beside the mute button, there should be a little icon of a camera. If try clicking that, start it again.
there's no camera, there's start video, but that doesn't allow me to start the video.
What does it say?
What does it say as a response?
It comes, it shows settings. Enable HD.
Double click on the camera. See if that will work. No?
There's a video settings. If you go to the arrow that's right next to the camera, maybe it's in video settings.
I don't know what I did.
You did great. So Freddie, can you go to hover over where it says Paul Cooper? And
Yeah,
there it says, and then more?
it just says video. Make host.
Yes, please.
let me make Kusha host now, right?
Sure, let's try that.
Okay.
Okay, you're muted, Kusha.
Oh, I said, there we go.
Click
Thanks.
somebody else.
So if you could then go to Monica and hover over where it will say mute and more, then make Monica host.
Make host, got it.
Okay, so Monica, if you can unmute so we know if you are able to make yourself seen by video. There we go.
How are you guys? Can I just put on mute for 1 second? I'm just closing up my other Zoom.
Paul, you're on mute.
Thank you. We'll wait for Monica to return, and then we'll see if Monica can pass the host over to Nicholas, and then we'll finally be ready. And we have, I guess, close to 200 people on who are being very patient, and it's appreciated. Monica?
One, I just was in another program.
No problem. Could you kindly hover over Nicholas' name and go to make Nicholas the host?
Who, me?
Yes, please. So we've been having difficulty with our video, so we're trying to make each person the host and pass it on to the next person, then we'll have everybody live.
Okay, hold on, I gotta find. Okay, so what do I do? What do I click on? How do I do that?
Okay, so do you see Nicholas's name?
Yeah.
As- okay, if you hover over where the microphone is.
Yeah, click on that.
Yeah, a blue bubble should pop up that says mute, and then to the right of it, it should say more. Click on the more one.
Okay, hold on, because hold on a second. Okay, just hold on. Hold on, I just. Okay, wait. It says more. Okay, more. Chat 11, but it doesn't say any. I click on more, but it doesn't allow me to do anything else.
In front of Nicholas's name, or on top of Nicholas's name?
Yeah, so I clicked on it, but it's, oh my God.
Sometimes it's just a blue box with 3 dots. And if you click on that blue box with 3 dots.
I don't see the box. All I have is it says more with 11 on top, but hold on.
You can go to my name, Paul Cooper, see if it will, we can do that.
Hold on. Okay, yeah, let me go. Hold on. Paul. Share content, participants. No, hold on. Oh, where's that? Hold on. Stop live chat. No, all it says is record to cloud chat webinar setting. It won't allow me to do anything else.
Okay, so I'm not sure if you're in gallery view or if you're.
I'm in gallery view.
Okay, perfect. So in gallery view now, if you exit full screen,
Oh God, okay, wait.
there'll be a side.
Okay, well, hold on. I'm just trying. It's difficult on the phone. I just like hold on. I'm having difficulties here. Minimize webinar web setting. Okay, hold on. Oh, wait, let me go here. Okay. Okay, who's this here? Who are you? Who is this one? Okay. So do I go to Paul? Who do you want me to go to?
It's Paul, you can try myself, Paul.
Okay, so I'm on you. So I click on your name.
Not on my name. To the right of my name, hopefully a little bubble pops up that says more or has 3 dots.
I see it says more and has 3 dots on top and it says 12.
Okay. If you want to try to click on the more, see what options it provides.
Okay, so when I click on the more, all it provides is record to the cloud, chat 12, webinar setting, minimize webinar, stop live stream, and disconnect audio.
So, okay, we're now at 4:57.
But maybe I should.
If it's just me you can't see, I'm happy to do mine without the video.
It's 2 people.
Do you mind? My apologies for the thing. Maybe we should get started because,
Yeah, I don't mind at all.
okay, everybody, please accept my personal apologies. I think that the program itself will be the best response to our whatever, the fuck up in technology, because at the end of the day, it will make us a little more. So let's get started. I hand it over to you.
Thank
Go ahead.
you, Paul. Well, I learned a lot just now, actually. I'm learning about Zoom every time I use it. So thank you very much for that little tutorial. So everybody, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to introduce everybody on the panel. There was supposed to be a 5th individual on the panel, but by the name of Keith McGrady. I don't think he's joined us, and I don't think he's going to be joining us. So
We're trying to get Keith online. Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry, I see Keith here actually.
Oh, he is?
Yeah,
He's joined? Great.
it's there. There's Keith McGrady here. Yeah, I do see it.
Okay, so Monica, on your phone, you're going to have to admit, because you're the host now, you're going to have to admit Keith.
Are you serious? Oh my God.
Okay, as long as we can hear Keith, then we can get started.
Yeah, Keith is on there.
Okay.
Hi,
So-
sorry.
It's okay. So I'm just going to introduce the panelists in the order that they're going to speak. The first panelist is Kusha Dadui. I hope I pronounced that properly, from Supporting Our Youth, otherwise known as SOY, Sherborne Health Center. And Kusha is a trans-masculine person who came to Canada as a refugee 25 years ago. For the past 2 decades, Kusha has been working with trans and queer refugees in different capacities. Kusha's research was on trans refugees and incarceration. Kusha has been working at Sherborne for the past 8 years as trans program coordinator and currently youth resource worker. Welcome, Kusha.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So I just wanted to start by kind of going a little bit over basic terminology because I wasn't sure where folks were at with that. So I'm going to be talking about also a little bit about what came out of my own research very briefly, and why it's important in the context of law, and particularly now COVID-19 and how people are being criminalized. So when we're talking about trans and gender diverse people, we're talking about people whose gender identity, gender expression, and gender transition differs from what is expected or what they were assigned at birth. And also, it's important to know terms like cissexism, which is the world we live in. We live in a cissexist world, and it's a set of assumptions and beliefs that normalizes and privileges people who are cisgender, which means anyone else who's not trans. This includes prejudice and or discrimination against people who are not cisgender in order to address transphobia. We need to tackle that first. And transphobia is a strong dislike, hatred, sense of disgust, or even fear related to trans people. Transphobia significantly intersects with other forms of hatred and discrimination, including misogyny and racism. And the particular term used for when we intersect misogyny and transphobia, it's misogyny. And also there was a request to explain dead naming, which I think in the legal context might be important because a lot of trans folks don't use their their legal name. So dead name is when folks refer to basically misname and misgender trans people and don't use the name that they've chosen for themselves, and they use the name that they've been given and they don't use, and it's connected to their past or what some may refer to as a dead identity. So starting with that, I wanted to talk a little bit why in this context it's important to talk about trans refugees and the barriers that they face. Within this context, trans refugees, when they come here, a lot of the issues that start like that comes up as a barrier. The first one might be their IDs and documents, basically. So when their IDs and their documents don't match with how they present, that could be a great barrier. For one thing, they can be charged with fraud at the border, and they could be going into immigration detention centers, which is obviously very harmful. And the other aspect of it, I'm sure folks know that for a refugee hearing to be successful, you need to basically have two things, and two main things. One of them is that you have to prove who you say you are, and you have to prove that based on that identity, your life has been in danger. And in this context, it might create a barrier for trans folks, especially for folks who have not changed their names or their gender identity in their documentation. And that's really not accessible for majority of trans folks. To give you an example, like me, I'm in a pretty, good place. I have a lot of privileges, but when I went to change my my gender on my documentation, I was calling immigration to ask what I need to do because my birth certificate is from Iran. And what they told me was, well, you need to go back to, and this is after I explained to them that I came here as a refugee. And what they said to me was, you need to go back to Iran and change your document. So I'm just like, okay, but you understand the concept of coming here as a refugee. But even here, it can be expensive. A lot of trans folks who are refugees particularly don't have that kind of money to be able to afford that. And it can be complicated. And obviously this intersects with racism within the system. We all know that we're living in a very, the structures that we live in are very racist, and there's also social racism in terms of mental health. So for instance, a lot of trans refugees come here, they think that, I'm coming here, Canada's very well known as this country that's that we're protected in, and that there's no transphobia, we can be free. And the issue here is that it's important to actually, in this climate that we are in right now, to push against that, because it's very far from reality. This concept of these experiences of trans refugees and many other refugees completely negates this idea of Canadian nobility. And it's important to push that, especially now, because we're in a situation with the US that Canada can easily place itself as this country of, you know, liberal and noble, whereas like structural racism is very much deep here. And the issue also here is that when we look at that, when folks come here, finding employment, finding, you know, when they're discriminated against for getting housing, right? Or access to certain things, the legal system is not really there to protect them, because what happens is it's up to them to prove that they're being discriminated against. And that's a very, very difficult thing to do. You know, like if you go, if me as a trans person, I go and I'm applying for a job and I don't get the job based on being trans, it's hard for me to prove that. Right. And many folks are so busy with trying to just survive every day that this does not become their priority. Right. And the other issue that it's important to consider is, you know, all shelters and even social workers and sometimes even lawyers can be an extension of this system of policing and this oppressive system. For instance, like, you know, in shelters, you know, the way that people go in and out, the way they have that they're basically controlled all the time. And that can be a huge issue in terms of signing in and out every time you go. And this, particularly now with COVID-19 and the situation that's in the shelters, but if you put them together, it's just horrendous. And sending a trans woman to shelters that are basically for men, you know, that's also another thing. When you come here as a refugee, you do not have housing. So that's the first option you take, and that can become a major issue. So my point here is that, like, all these part of these, all of that we do as like social workers and lawyers, and, you know, these are all extensions of that system. What we can do is basically the least we can do our best to kind of support the clients the best way that we can, right? In terms of like not misgendering them. These are the least that we can do as service providers. And that's just on the basis. Because all of these, what I looked at my research basically was a lot to do with how this systemic racism impacts these structures, impact the well-being and trans refugees. And if you look at and when I'm talking about like intersectionality, I'm talking about like intersectionality of systems. And when you put them all together, it creates a system where folks become severely marginalized, right? And it leads to suicidality. It leads to police coming and shooting folks. It leads to all of those things, right? So the best way to prevent those is to actually center those folks that we need to support. Those being like trans folks of color, trans women of color, non-binary folks of color. So it's really important to think about it that way, centering their.
Kusha, just wanted to let you know there's just a couple minutes left.
Sorry, okay.
Unfortunately, we're just short on time. So
yeah, no problem. So
yeah.
I'm just gonna leave that here to think about, and if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer that. Thank you.
Okay, you do have a couple minutes left, and I do want to let you know that for any of the attendees that are listening, if you have any questions, you can ask it in the Zoom comments, and we'll write them down, and then at the end, we'll address them with the panelists. So please do that now if you want to. And you know, I'm sorry I had to cut you off, Kusha, but if there was a thought that you want to finish off, please do.
Yeah, like I was saying, I think the most important thing to think about is how folks are criminalized, especially racialized bodies and trans bodies in terms of like COVID-19 right now, right? Like if you, I'm just going to give you a quick example. Like if you look at what happened at Trinity Bellwoods, and all these folks that were there, mostly white and mostly, I'm assuming like cis folks, younger cis folks, and only 4 tickets were given out. And the youth that I work with, most of them racialized. I work with 20 youth and at least 10 of them have gotten tickets over $1,000 just for being in a park by themselves. So this is the imbalance that I'm talking about, and I'm just centering folks around that and really intentionally centering them in a service that we provide. Thank you.
Okay. I was actually there. I was walking through Trinity Bellwoods. I just happened to be walking through and I thought, is there a festival going on? I didn't understand because there were just hundreds of people. And you are right. It was mostly almost all white. And it was also just my impression was mostly all cis people as well. So that's interesting. I didn't know, first of all, I don't know who the 4 people were that got tickets. And second of all, I didn't realize that in comparison to other marginalized people, it's a very, very, very small percentage, but that's interesting to note. Thank you. Now, the next person that's going to be speaking is Nicholas. And Nicholas Woodward is an associate lawyer with Batista Smith Immigration Law Group. His practice focuses on helping vulnerable persons, including members of the LGBTQ community and those living with HIV. He helps them navigate the complexities of Canada's immigration and refugee systems. Nicholas holds both a law degree, a Juris Doctor, and an Honours Bachelor of Arts from the University of Ottawa. Nicholas joined Batista Smith following a clerkship at the federal court, where he worked with the Honorable Justice Elizabeth Walker. Nicholas works on a wide range of immigration and refugee files, including refugee claims, applications for judicial review, and compassionate grounds, and pre-permanent resident-based, and pre-removal risk assessments. He has experience representing clients before administrative tribunals such as the Immigration and Refugee Board, as well as the federal court. Welcome, Nicholas, and take it away. Unfortunately, we can't see you, but we can hear you.
Okay, hi, thank you for that. You can hear me, right?
We can hear you.
Okay. I the host, if you want to try your camera one more time. If not, just go ahead.
Okay.
So if Monica wants to try one more time using...
I've taken back the host. Sorry.
Oh, you've taken back the host. Okay, great.
So if not, Nicholas, feel free to just
okay.
Go ahead. My apologies.
Okay. Speak to you this afternoon about how transgender refugee claimants can make claims for protection in Canada, and how some ways of how the rights of folks with diverse gender identity or sexual orientation are protected within the refugee system. So in order to do this, I'm going to start with a few very basics about refugee law. So as many of you are likely aware, the UN Convention relating to the status of refugees is the basis for refugee law in Canada. Convention refugees are individuals who have fled their country of origin on the basis of a well-founded fear of persecutions based on one of 5 grounds. Sexual orientation and gender identity are protected as part of the ground of membership in a particular social group. So therefore, in order to be accepted as a refugee in Canada, a trans refugee claimant must prove that they fear persecution in their country of origin on the basis of their gender identity or sexual orientation. So refugee claims based on sexual orientation or gender identity, or SOGI, pose several unique questions, particularly when it comes to evidence, which is what I'm going to talk about for the most part today. So how does someone prove their sexual orientation or gender identity? And how do they establish that they may be persecuted because of how they identify? Additionally, refugee claims based on SOGI are made even more complex because of their interaction with cultural norms. Many claimants making claims in Canada have never identified with or even used terms like lesbian, gay, transgender, or LGBTQ, and suddenly are being forced to identify with these labels in order to fit into a box prescribed by Western conceptions of social group identity. These are just a few of the complicated issues at play in the context of refugee claims based on SOGI. So when helping a refugee claimant prepare their claim, it's really important to think about the types of evidence the individual can use to support their claim. When you first think about it, it might seem difficult to provide evidence of one's sexual orientation or gender identity. And it may be a challenging conversation to have, particularly with a client who has lived most of their life hiding their identity. However, there are many ways that a refugee claimant can establish their gender identity or sexual identity before the Refugee Protection Division. First of all, an important principle that in many circumstances, an individual's testimony might be their only evidence of their SOGI and the persecution they face as a result. In many cases involving SOGI, corroborating evidence from family or friends may not be available to the claimant. For example, individuals who have concealed their SOGI for their entire lives out of fear will often not have evidence of their SOGI other than their own testimony. And the Refugee Protection Board is required to consider this. So I'm just going to go through a few other types of evidence that a claimant can disclose to the board in order to establish their SOGI, which can include letters of support. They can provide letters from friends or family members who can corroborate the claimant's gender identity or sexual orientation, or events that were described in their claim. For example, in the context of a transgender refugee claim, a close friend who's aware of the claimant's gender identity could write a letter explaining they knew the claimant, when they found out their gender identity, how they reacted, any incidents they either witnessed or were informed of. Another example is medical reporting. Really important, particularly if they've begun the transitioning, which evidently is not a requirement. In cases where trans claimants are interested in beginning the process of transitioning and have had preliminary discussions with doctors or caseworkers, the claimant can also provide a letter from these individuals or confirmation of appointments or even emails. If the claimant has ever gone to the police in their country of origin as a result of incidents they faced, the claimant can include a copy of the police report if this is available. Of course, though on this point, it is important to remember that in many countries, police do not take complaints made by LGBTQ individuals seriously. And because of this, there's often no report made or any record of the incident. Additionally, LGBTQ individuals may be afraid to approach the police to report an incident because the authorities in their country share the same transphobic or homophobic attitudes and behaviors. Another possibility is to provide evidence of participation within the LGBTQ community, which typically occurs after the claimant has arrived in Canada. This can include participation in a community group, like a trans support group or a trans youth organization, or volunteering or attendance at a pride festival or another organization. In these cases, we ask the claimant to provide a letter from the organization confirming their participation or certificates of attendance or membership cards. On this point, refugee claimants very frequently ask whether they should attend an LGBTQ organization in order to prove or strengthen their refugee claim. And it's important to note that refugee claimants should not participate in these types of organizations for the sole purpose of strengthening their claims. If a claimant has provided a letter of support from an organization, at the hearing, they should be prepared to explain their motivation for attending. Also, participation within the LGBTQ community is not mandatory in order to prove gender identity or sexual orientation. Another question I'm often asked by refugee claimants making claims based on SOGI is, what if they do not have a history of persecution because of their SOGI? Clients who have not been physically harmed in their country of origin because of their gender identity or sexual orientation are often concerned that their refugee claims will not be strong enough. However, it's important to remember that having experienced persecution or physical harm is not a requirement to making a claim. In fact, being forced to conceal one's gender identity or sexual orientation can constitute persecution. as LGBTQ individuals cannot be expected to conceal their SOGI as a way to avoid persecution in their country of origin. To go back to the Convention refugee definition, an individual must prove that they have a well-founded fear of persecution in their country of origin. Physical harm or persecution is not a requirement. So how are the rights of transgendered people and other individuals with diverse SOGI protected within the refugee system? In 2017, the Immigration and Refugee Board introduced its Chairperson's Guideline 9, which I'll refer to as the SOGI guidelines. These guidelines were designed to promote a greater understanding of the diversity and complexity of the situation of individuals with diverse SOGI and the harm they may face. These guidelines are intended to address the particular challenges that LGBTQ claimants face when they present their cases before the Immigration and Refugee Board, including, for example, cases in which claimants fail to provide evidence of their gender identity because of the persecution they face in their country of origin. So I'm just going to go through a few of the most important articles that come from the SOGI guidelines, which include, there's Article 4, which speaks to the use of appropriate language, which states that language during the hearing should reflect the claimant's self-identification, so preferred name and pronouns, and always avoid negative connotations. Article 6 of the SOGI guidelines states that board members are to avoid relying on stereotypes at all times. So for example, in the context of trans claimants, a member may not assume that trans individuals will seek to have surgical treatment. Article 7.1 states that an individual's testimony may be the only evidence of their SOGI, which I already mentioned previously. And of course, there are many more valuable principles that are contained within the SOGI guidelines, but I just wanted to provide you a taste of some of the most important advocacy tools. It's important to note that the board is required to apply these SOGI guidelines, and that this has been upheld by the federal court. In a recent federal court case from 2019 called McKenzie, the court allowed an application for judicial review on the basis that the Refugee Appeal Division, the RAD, had failed to apply the SOGI guidelines. So as refugee lawyers, it's really important to be aware of what is contained within these guidelines in order to properly advocate for our clients with diverse SOGI. As there continue to be many board members who fail to understand the particular challenges that LGBTQ refugees face while presenting their claims. So I hope to have provided a taste of some of the unique challenges faced by trans and SOGI diverse refugee claimants today. And I want to end just by saying to feel free to reach out to me later if ever you have any questions. And thank you so much for your attention today.
Thank you, Nicholas. You're actually under time, which is great because we're running a little late now, so that works. All right, so the next person that I'd like to introduce is Keith. And Keith McGrady is the executive director at Two-Spirited People of the First Nations. As well as being two-spirited himself, he grew up with transgender and two-spirited people in his family. He has worked with Indigenous families for over 20 years through roles with Native Child and Family Services of Toronto as Senior Supervisor of the Scarborough Child and Family Life Centre and Child Care and Aboriginal Head Start programs. In recognition of his dedication to helping vulnerable children, Keith received the Prime Minister's Award for Excellence in Early Childhood Education. Welcome, Keith, and please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me. So I'm not used to speaking in 8 minutes, so I'm going to do my best to kind of be a little more succinct. I'm more of a storyteller. I don't always have this kind of script of what I want to say because I do believe every moment is part of the story that I'm meant to share. And
you
so
have 12 minutes, by the way, so you've got more time than you think.
Oh, that's dangerous. The first thing I want to say is that, you know, we all have a reason that we're invested in working with people, working alongside people, and it has to do with our stories. And I think one of the most important things I tell people is if you don't listen to people's stories, you won't understand where people are coming from, different perspectives, different kind of ideas, and challenging ourselves about the way we think, what we think. And that being said, I became a person who has been very open to grow and challenge myself as far as, you know, who I am and my identity. I came out as a gay man at 26 years old. I already had 3 children, and I was a gay Aboriginal man. That's how I identified. And, you know, as a person who started working in early childhood education, actually by accident, I really knew I wanted to do something because of my own childhood trauma and what happened to me in the past that included sexual abuse. I wanted to protect children. I thought, this is my role, this is my job in life. I'm going to protect children so this won't happen to them. And when I came into this work, I realized that it really wasn't about me protecting children. It was about me walking alongside people in their journeys and their healings, and, you know, making sure that everyone has access to the same resources, that people have access to information, that they have the same space, and that they have their voices are heard. And this is what kept me motivated. This is what kept me kind of continuing on and the work that I'm doing. I came into work at Two-Spirited People of the First Nations about 2 years ago, and I didn't apply for the job. They approached me, and I think it's important to say that because when this opportunity came to me, it really made me realize, you know, our communities and the work that we're doing, and how much more work there is to do within our own Indigenous community. A lot of the work that I was doing in maybe the last 20 years working with Indigenous people, no one mentioned Two-Spirit people. There wasn't a lot of talk about it. There wasn't a lot of talk about HIV, which is what our agency, a lot of our work is. And I thought, you know, this is where I need to be. This is the place I need to go. I also had these visions of these Two-Spirit child and family programs, you know, different kind of ways to work with children. And that's kind of what brought me to this work. Anyways, that being said, some of the things I thought was important to talk about was, you know, the changes to the sex ed curriculum. You know, as someone who has a lot of respect for children, who believes that children are in the circle alongside of all of us, that we all have a place, I believe that I respect children. And I think that in a different way that people understand, I think that children are capable and competent human beings. I think they have the ability to make choices. They have the ability to understand tough concepts. And so things like our sexual gender, sexual identity, these are things that are going to be important to them if this is something that they're curious about. And I think giving children opportunities to explore these things is so valid and so valuable, because not every child is cis child. Not every child is a straight child. I remember that one of my first experiences was someone said to me, "Oh, Keith, I'm okay with you being gay, but I don't want you to teach my children about being gay." And I said, well, I don't teach children about being gay. I teach children about love and kindness and respect and tolerance and empathy. These are the things I teach children. And I use myself as a model. And I said, that's important to me, because I don't want someone teaching any child something that isn't who they are. So I think a lot of the experiences I had in early childhood education and in leadership was that people kept their own bias, they kept their own lens, and they pushed it on children and the whole system of education. I remember one of my most vivid experiences was I was in a room full of 50 people, and of those 50 people, I was the only male. And we're all leaders in early childhood education, all supervisors, all people who are making decisions. And they had a little poll that they did, and the poll said, "How are we doing in inclusivity?" 1 to 5, and 5 means we're doing amazing, 1 means we're not. And there was all 5s, 2 4s, and 1 1. And they were very proud, because just before this, everyone introduced themselves. "Hi, my name is Susan. I've been here 20 years. Hi, my name is Linda. I've been here 25 years. Hi, my name is Diane. I've been here 35 years. And they just kept upping. And it was this humor, right? They thought it was funny. They thought their voice was that important that it needed to be here for 35 years. And as I spoke, they said, there's the person who said, "I want that we're not doing well. Do they want to say why?" I said, "Oh yes, I would love to." And I stood up and I said, the reason I say why is because in early childhood, we force children to learn all about different races and different experiences, different abilities. We talk about cultures, we talk about kindness, we talk about sharing. But as leaders, this whole room is full of white middle-aged women who are highly likely straight, because I don't know anyone who's came out to me. I said, So it's concerning that I am the indigenous person, I am the person of color, I am the male, I am the LGBT community representative, I am probably the youngest person in this room. I said, and I've been here the last 10 years and I see all you, nothing's changed. I said, why is your voice so important? Is there no one else you could send here? I could have sent lots of my staff that would have a lot more diversity as well. But I knew that I'm needed there. I knew that in this whole time that my voice was there because we're so compliant, see, one of those words, in, you know, just the status quo, like this is what I know and this is what I'm comfortable with. You know, I was in an auditorium where they said, hello, ladies. You know, I'm one of the most, I stand out in that room, I know I do, but it's like, you're not welcome here. And I think that was a message that was told to me over and over. And so I made sure that I worked hard to include males and people who identified in other ways than as white, straight, middle-aged female. And it was a lot of work. It was very hard because that's not what people want. People want, you know, this kind of like what they're used to and what the norm is. And think about the messages that they're sending children. There's people there who are very, you know, who have a lot of kind of what they call allies. I don't know if I like that word. If you're an ally, you shouldn't have to say that you're an ally. I think you should be an ally. And it really concerned me that whole time. And as I moved into a new field of working with HIV, I thought there'd be a lot more diversity because of the field. We know that, you know, how HIV impacts all the communities. And as I got there, it was again, middle-aged gay white men who are making the decisions. And I think this just says, you know, what the problem is. We need to hear more. People need to be able to see themselves, to be able to feel like they're welcome, that they're included, that they're heard. And that's kind of one of the things why, even though we're talking about, you know, other things, I feel as though, as a person who's two-spirited, and I could share what that means to me. When I came in to this community, I know that two-spirited is part of the 2S LGBTQ, and a lot of people identify as that as their sexuality, and that's okay, and that's their truth, that's what they know. And there's other people who identify as their gender, you know, they're not male, they're not female, they're two-spirited, and that's also right, and that's also okay, that's also their truth. But for me, being two-spirited is my role in my community. It's a place in the circle. And someone once told me that two-spirited people are special. Yes, we are, but everyone is special. We all have a place in the circle. We're no more important. There's no one more who's more valuable. We're all the same, just as children are. So when I talk to, you know, people who think that children can't make their own decisions, or that we're gonna, you know, have children being curious about something, well, curiosity is the best thing in the world. That's how we learn. You know, children are teachers just as much as we are teachers, and I think that's one of the things that I thought was important to speak about. I also do identify as two-spirited because of the role, and I take this role seriously. And I think a lot of my work in my whole life has demonstrated that. And I think also, you know, as we, you know, what's going on in the world right now, all the change, to me, it's so exciting. It's so painful, but so exciting. Like, we need people who are these allies, these people who have these privileges to stop being okay with what's happening, and stop assuming that you have you can't do anything. You have so much power, and we could talk about it till the end of the day, but unless you're going to do something and show your bravery, then nothing is going to change. And that's what I've been doing in my career, in my work, is challenging people to do something different. I work in HIV, and, you know, Indigenous people contract HIV at the highest rate in Canada. And when people talk about how that they're not servicing Indigenous people, to me, it's so confusing, because if HIV is your passion, then Indigenous people should be your passion. If harm reduction is your passion, then Indigenous people should be your passion, because we know what's happening in Indigenous communities. And that includes two-spirited people. That includes our trans folk. That includes all of our brothers and sisters who are part of that. You know, I remember the first time someone came to my two-spirited doors, and they were not Indigenous, and they were not part of the two-spirit community, but they wanted to be. And all I said was, oh yeah, we're ready for you. We could service you. We know how to service you, because you're part of our circle. Everyone is. So these agencies that can't service Indigenous people, it's because they're not ready. It's because they don't want to. It's because they don't see the value in that, and they're not doing their job. They're not doing that. And so when I stand up in front of people, I say, if you're a leader and you're leading Indigenous people, you need to lead them or get out of the way. And that's kind of the message I'm saying to people. I don't think we have time for this uncomfortableness anymore. I think it's about, let's step up and do what we're supposed to be. One of the teachings in Indigenous community is bravery. And we all need to show our bravery. We all need to show our kindness. We all need to show our truth. That's all I was going to say.
Oh, okay. So you have 45 seconds left if you'd like to say anything else.
No, I just want to say that I also I really wanted my sister Monica to be here. I think she's a champion. She's been advocating for trans people since the day I met her. And I think, you know, as someone who's two-spirited, I know who I am. I know my identity, but I know what I look like. And I know also that sometimes that could be taking the space of other people who are trans and who are two-spirited in a different way than I am. And I know that it's important that we share this space and make sure that we lift up voices and give those kind of voices to people like Monica who deserve that. So that's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to remind attendees that if they have any questions for any of the panelists, please write them down or text them in the chat, and we will be collecting them. And at the end, be asking the panelists in terms of the questions that you have. I'm going to next introduce Monica, actually, who works at Maggie's, the Toronto Sex Workers Action Project. And Monica Forrester is a queer two-spirit trans woman of color whose pronouns are she, her, they. Monica has been living and working in the trans and queer community for 30 years, bringing awareness to the most marginalized community in the larger LGBTQ2S+ communities. Monica is also the founder of Trans Pride Toronto, transitioning together since 2004 to bring and deliver services from trans two-spirit people that understand the needs of the communities they identify with. They do advocacy, education, and outreach services to various communities in the larger trans, two-spirit, and sex work, homeless, and racialized communities. Welcome, Monica, and take it from there.
Okay, well, hi, everyone. Yeah, thank you. Oh, what can I say? So you know the history already. So I have been around for 30 years. So I did come out as a youth in the 80s. And it was a time where I felt like, you know, I come from out of town, came to the city, was trying to find myself. There were services like there were here we have now for a lot of youth. So I found myself at Church in Wellesley with a lot of youth, which is very common. We see a lot of youth, especially racialized, two-spirited, Black, BIPOC youth that are homeless or street active. So that's where I found my community. And I was also came out at a time when we were going through the AIDS crisis. So there was so much going on. But I was happy to be in the community. I was happy to actually find people that I identified the same way I did, that I can actually change my gender to be who I am. But I also seen another part of the community that was really troubling for me. So, because I grew up from a lot of people thinking that queer people were always accepting and loving and they loved each other. But that was a different picture when I came into the community where trans women were seen as these deviant people. They were violent, they were, because, and they lived in the shadows of the queer community. So, and they were dying in high numbers. So I witnessed trans women at the age of 20. Our livelihood to live was till 25. When my friends were dying from 19, 20, 21, if you lived till 30, you were actually living a long life. And I'm so grateful I've kind of lived till I'm 50 now. But it's been a struggle. And I think that's what really pushed me into the work I wanted to do. I was the first ever trans outreach worker hired by the city of Toronto in 1999, which was the best thing that's ever happened to the community. I think that was a pivoting time when we started seeing a lot of agencies stepping up and supporting trans and two-spirited people. Like I said, they've always been around. When I was a youth, I go to places like Covenant House and all these different places or youth shelters, and they didn't know what to do with us. They were putting us in other places, or they weren't giving us services because they couldn't understand, or they were faith-based agencies that try to convert us. You know, it was ongoing. So working the 519 was my first job, actually, and it was a time where I felt like I had a voice to make change. So I was doing outreach within the communities, and you know, that program's been running actually 20 years. Me, Mira Soleil actually started that program in 1999, and I could say today that that was the pivotal time where the community felt that they were valued, that people actually were concerned about their health and well-being, that they actually had a space where they can feel safe, where they can engage with each other without the fear of being criminalized, policed, discriminated, stigmatized. And I'm not saying these things still didn't happen, but they had a space to call their own. And I think follow suit from that, we've seen the Sherburne Health Center and many other agencies really taking steps to actually make spaces for trans youth, you know, or, you know, Sherburne Health is definitely on the top there with the numerous of supports and programming for all different ages, which I really love going there. But I want to go back to, you know, trans women most often are not believed about their gender. They're most often they're not believed about the life experience, the stigma, the violence that they experience in their lives. That's something that I've experienced, even working within in the social service sector for over 22 years. I've worked in about 15 agencies over that time to bring a more of an awareness, a visibility, to show that, you know, trans women are just as capable as cisgender people, queer people, to actually hold, you know, jobs to actually support community. But it was a hard road. I'd had agencies that silenced me. I had where they, you know, I was okay to work there, but I wasn't allowed to voice what we needed, you know, or when I did, I was dismissed. You know, so these things are still going on within the community, that trans women are not hired in high, like, you know, like coordinator positions or management positions. We're seeing mostly on frontline. They're working precarious hours. So, you know, they're working different jobs to support themselves, or they're working in a job that has precarious hours, doesn't allow them to work other jobs, which keeps them still in poverty, struggling to pay rents, you know, and then struggling to transition. I think, you know, when we look around privilege, we also look around, unfortunately, how much you pass. You know what I mean? And I think passing plays a big role in all trans and non-binary people's lives when they're going through the system, when they're going through services, when they're trying to get work, you know. And that's what really sets trans people up around not being believed about their chosen gender, you know, not being able to get jobs because of the way they look. But I'm glad we're in an era where we can actually, there's still a lot of work to be done, that trans people can look and identify they want to. And I really, when I came out in '88, I was conformed to be if I wanted to be accepted, I had to identify as a heterosexual woman. I had to be feminine. I had to, you know, so I was conformed to these cisgendered ideas, which was really painstaking for me because I wasn't heterosexual. I was a woman of color. And I just didn't feel like I had to change, be something that I wasn't, you know, so that for a lot of trans people that time, it was really hard. I can honestly say today that still exists when we're looking around who's being accepted and who isn't. But we're seeing within the larger trans and non-binary community that we're seeing that people can be who they want to be and look the way they want to look. As you all know, that trans women of color, Indigenous, two-spirited trans women are mostly criminalized and experience the most violence. Even as myself as a trans woman, sorry. Oh. someone's trying to call through. Even as myself as a trans woman, I'm still fighting the system. I'm still being carded when I step outside my door. That I'm, you know what I mean? If I'm a sex worker because I'm going to the club, I got a knife pulled on me when I was doing outreach on the. I thought I'd call the police because I had privilege. I got a home. I can go home. But for all my trans sisters that are working those streets, I thought I'm going to call the police. The guy lived on the corner. You know, they did a statement and nothing was done. They called me 2 months later, telling me they closed the case. Like, what does that say about trans people's lives? You know what I mean? They only investigate us. They only give us as when we're dead, and that is unacceptable. You know, so I did an internal investigation on that, and I won. They were accountable. They did not do nothing. The guy's still on the streets. He's still living in that building. You know what I mean? So that puts me at risk because I live in that area. Puts many of our trans women and trans men or non-binary people at risk. These are some of the systemic things that trans people face in their lives daily, and especially if you're a racialized or indigenous person. Hold on a second. So I do a lot of work around sex work because this is a community that's overlooked. This is a community that's targeted and criminalized. You know, most trans women, including myself, I did not wake up and say I wanted to be a sex worker. I didn't watch that show Pretty Woman with Julia Roberts and said, hey, that's what it's gonna, you know, that was not my life thing to be. You know, but I knew being transgendered, I could not get a job. No one, but I couldn't get an apartment. I didn't want to live on welfare because I would live in a precarious housing. So most trans people are pushed into sex work to survive. They're pushed into transition. I spent over $20,000 just to transition, to feel comfortable in my body, and to unfortunately feel I can be a part of society. And sometimes I think back about my transition because we're so forced to be what people want us to be that we kind of lose ourselves within that. You know what I mean? And I think regardless of what gender looks like, I think it's very individualized, but we're really forced to look a certain way. So, you know, a lot of trans women need to do sex work to survive. They need to do it to transition so they can go back. There's so many trans people that have degrees, especially trans women, that can't get jobs because they're trans. You know what I mean? And that systemic needs to stop. You know what I mean? We need to see more leaders within the community taking more, like I said, leadership roles within agencies around diversity of color and you know what I mean, and trans women. But also a lot of my work at Maggie's is just to also breaking down this challenging police. I'm on the police internal review board around the missing and murdered gay men and Laura Wells that was actually found in July, and the police did nothing. They had her body for 4 or 5 months. There was no outreach in the community. There was no public outreach on our TVs to say they found this person. It's Maggie's that had to go to media to find her, and someone came forward and told us there was a trans person found. You know what I mean? So this is what trans people face through the system. Police are always policing us. They're always carding us. I live in the queer community. I can't go to the park without people thinking that I'm doing something criminal. You know what I mean? I'm consistently being targeted or telling to get out of my own area. You know, these are consistent things that trans people are facing. With COVID, we're seeing a high number of racialized and two-spirited trans women that are homeless, that are actually living at the Cawthra Park right now. You know what I mean? With no housing, you know, these are the realities for a lot of trans people because their work has gone, you know, a lot of them use sex work to support their lives. Now that with COVID, the social distancing, police are policing the areas where sex workers work. You know, this puts, you know, this makes it, you know, hard for sex workers to work. You know, and then I want to go right into the legal system. as for a lot of trans people, you know what I mean? They don't have, especially trans women, not all, but they don't have their legal names changed. So this is something constant that they're always asked what their dead name is, you know, or even if you have your name changed, they're always asking what your alias is. When you're in front of the courts, most often they're detained because they're homeless or they don't have a fixed address. If they're newcomers, I know many women that have been deported because of a sex work communication charge. You know, these are things that are ongoing. And then we thought we changed the system to allow trans women to go to self-identified jails. They're going to women's jails, but they're also being put in the whole time that they're in the jail. So they're being isolated against other cisgendered women because of the fear that they would be dangerous. And so when I addressed this to that Vanier, they said, well, we have to keep them in the hall for 7 to 10, 14 days. So we want to make sure that they're going to be safe to put on the range. This is another idea that trans women are inherently violent and that they're, you know, they're going to put other women at risk. You know, and many trans women have waived their rights to go to a men's jail because they felt the isolation not only affected their mental health, but also, you know, it was just inhumane. The inhumane things that they were experiencing within the jails when trans women were going to the West detention. You know, I've been to jail once, and trans women, especially in men's jails, they're sexualized and demand sex from other inmates. And when you go to the West detention, where trans women were going, they were putting them in the hole when they asked for condoms just to stay safe. You know, these are the systemic issues that a lot of trans people are facing. We need to really, as lawyers, really, if you are lawyers, is really look at the laws and how these laws really are criminalizing people that are consenting to sex. You know, as a sex worker, I've never hurt anyone. I've never harmed anyone. No one's ever been threatened. You know, sex workers, especially trans women in the sex industry, are just trying to make a living. We need to really rally around decriminalization. We really need to really support that. When we think, you know, then we have this conflation and with trafficking. No, these laws allow traffickers to actually traffic women and trans women because the laws have made it hard for sex workers to work in pairs. It's made it hard for sex workers to work in safe spaces. They've taken all areas of advertising for sex workers to actually work safely within spaces. This allows, you know, these third-party traffickers to actually target sex workers. So these are ongoing discussions that Maggie's is having. We've tried to work endlessly with police, never happened. We've never had police ever wanted to come and support us or work with us, how we can, you know, keep communities safe, how, you know, learn about community. You know, trans women in the sex industry will not report violence. They will not report abuse because of the experience of not being believed, saying it's your fault because of the work you do, it's your fault because you're a trans woman or a two-spirited trans person. These are the realities. And most often in the last 20 years, it's been all trans women of color that have been killed. We've had one woman, Shavana Abdi in Hamilton, that died in police custody. She was thrown down the stairs. There was no internal investigation. There was no inquiry. It was swept under the rug. Candace Baxter was killed by a jail guard at the Toronto jail in early 90s. Cassandra Doe was killed by a predator that almost killed another sex worker. You know, these are systemic things that are consistently happening that, you know, that are putting trans people, especially more marginalized, racialized, homeless or sex working trans women at risk. You know, I know you are all lawyers out there, and I think it's really important you understand the stigma and the oppression that trans women especially are facing that are more visible, and really understand the importance of really getting to know communities, getting involved in community agencies that work with more marginalized and racialized communities, to really be able to best support them if you're their lawyer, how to best support them through the issues that they're facing around filing complaints against police, or around, you know, charging people, you know what I mean? Because these are some of the issues that a lot of trans people are facing, and most end up, you know what I mean, living with the abuse that they're living with.
Monica, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Am I almost done?
you're way past time.
Okay,
But
so I just want to end. I started Trans Pride Toronto because I was silenced within the services I was working. I felt that cisgender people were making choices for my body, my supports, my resources, and my life. Our agency our board is all full of two-spirited and people of color that really represent the communities we serve. And yeah, so, you know, my work is never done. You know, and I know most of these people on the panel, we've worked together in many different areas. And it's so great to have these people here because they really are very influential in the communities they serve. Thanks.
thank you, Monica. And I'm sure people will have questions at the end for
Yeah,
everybody.
no problem.
All right, so our last but not least speaker is Freddie. And I will just give you an introduction. Freddie Arps, hailing from the Caribbean and the Netherlands, Freddie Arps is an Oxford University trained lawyer and policy analyst with a special interest in the criminalization of trans lives globally. They've worked on Canada's LGBT refugee policy for Rainbow Railroad and at the Canadian HIV/AIDS Legal Network on Sex Workers' Rights, both before the Russian Supreme Court and before the European Court of Human Rights. In that capacity, they have written for Harvard Health and Human Rights and the Toronto Star. For the Parliament of the Netherlands, Freddie co-wrote a report on sentencing guidelines in environmental criminal law. They are currently based in Toronto and articled at Duty Council College Park and Scarborough. Welcome, Freddie, and please begin.
Hi, I'm going to share a presentation with you. The introduction shows immediately what needs to change in our communities. Let me share the screen. I don't know if can you still see my face while I'm reading from the slides?
Yes, we can see your face.
So a few things that I wanted to talk about is racialized transgender people in bail and plea court. And I will end with a short bit about how to treat your transgender colleagues well, how you can support them better. The first slide that you see up says a couple of things. I don't know if Monica can see it. But what she said earlier, that a lot needs to change, like bursts out at you from these three examples. Everybody that's accepted as lawyers, criminal lawyers, as trailblazers are white. There's not enough done at universities, at law schools, high schools, art schools to pull in Black and Indigenous youth. There's not enough done to focus, to center on Black trans people, Black trans men, Black trans women, Black trans people, and Black two-spirited people. I'm here today in the same way that everybody else on the panel is. I'm not as well prepared. For some reason, in the last week, a lot of transphobic incidents happened. These happen to us all the time. And all of this happens more to Black trans people, more to Indigenous trans people, and more to two-spirited Black people. They all have to do with health, safety, and trans erasure. One of the things that happened to me last week was that my dead names were published. This is an acute safety issue for me. I have been beaten in the last 6 years 3 times. I once got away with my life. And this kind of treatment of transgender people by the Law Society is typical and is just unsafe. Because I'm white, I'm in a much more secure place than any of my colleagues here. And we've been, in the last couple of weeks with Black Lives Matter, we've been trying to push the Black Trans Lives Matter positions very hard because of that. We're, like Monica said earlier, we're sexualized, fetishized, and one of the things that happened is that people, colleagues, neighbors, people you meet on the street ask you what your genitals are. And you're often in a situation where you're on your own and where with nobody there to help you. In the same week, trans erasure took place for me a couple of times in the activist community, as well as in an Alcohol Anonymous group. A lot of trans people live through their world by engaging in drugs and overuse of drugs. For me, it was alcohol. In any case, this particular AA group told me that they had taken off the LGBT label off their meeting because being trans, they had decided as a group, was too political. In the AA community, there are even fewer meetings for trans people with disabilities, racialized trans people, and very, very few that are supportive of Indigenous and two-spirited people and Indigenous trans people. So I will read a lot of what I've thought about, and there might be quite a bit of silence. The outline of what I will also send to the viewers later of my whole talk is divided into 5 bits. The arrest by police, what happens at the division. Secondly, what you can and cannot ask during a client interview. This is all focused on criminal law, by the way, like criminal lawyers and their practices. The third point that I'll touch on is disclosure. And for my colleagues here who are speakers as well, that means all the evidence, Monica will know this, all the evidence that the government has on you and will hopefully send to you on time, with a particular mention of comments by the officer in charge. The fourth point will be the bail hearing, how to prevent, correct, and affirm trans clients' cases and persons. And lastly, I will talk about the detention centers. Maybe I'll skip that because Monica already talked about that. I will say something about the specific issues of trans men and trans masculine non-binary trans clients in detention centers. I only have experience with the East Detention Center, the South, and Vanier. So it's by no means is my experience like full, but it will help. I was going to talk a little bit, and I won't, but I want you to Google this yourself. Criminalization of trans lives all over the world happens in very much the same way. It's always sex work and drug-related offenses. It's always fragrancy laws, even in Canada. Project Marie was one of them. That was where 100 trans women and cis gay men were arrested by police who hadn't informed their gay police group about it. What you see in the UK and in other countries, not yet in Canada, but I'm sure it will come, is gender non-disclosure criminalization and consent to sex. Right now in the United Kingdom, there are at least two trans men in jail for not having disclosed that at birth they were assigned female. So they had sex, they had consensual sex, but because they hadn't told their partners that their sex wasn't male, but was assigned, that they were assigned female at birth, the courts in the UK have decided that that vitiates consent. So the consent is taken away from the sex act, which led them to jail. And it's not a short time. It's 7 to 8 years that both of them are in for. And the arguments are exactly the same. And when these cases will come to us, we will have to fight them in the same way as we fight HIV non-disclosure cases, criminalization. The first thing, okay, the next topic is what happens at the division, at the police station, and what you need to know about your trans clients. Often they will have not just been arrested, but they will have been misgendered from the start, disbelieved from the start, and it happens more to, as Monica said, Black trans women. But it also happens to Black trans men, that because they're an immigrant and refugee trans people, because their ID does not yet, or doesn't at all say, because it's unsafe, what their felt gender is, there's a huge disconnect between the police and the accused. Any misgendering, and when you have your best day ever, can be horrible, can knock you down. When it happens, when you're being arrested, and what I've seen, I've lived in 5 countries, what I've seen from Canadian police is that they're rough, much rougher than in the Netherlands, Ireland, England, or Germany. It's a horrible experience. It's traumatizing on itself. So the arrest is traumatizing, the misgendering is traumatizing. And then when they reach the division, the first thing that happens is that you get searched. Thankfully, court officers and regular police have had numerous sensitivity trainings. It's not enough, but they do offer, I think in the last 5 years, 2 different types of searches, top and bottom. You can choose whether you can choose what what sex will search your body. You can have 2 different sexes, one for search of your upper body and one for your bottom. I have a friend who is one of the people who changed this, because when he was arrested, he was put into women's clothes. I don't know if everyone knows what silicone packers are. They're basically soft silicone forms of penises that trans men use to feel better, to present more as a cisgender man. That was taken away from him, and he was put in a cell with in the cell block with women. I can't remember if he was actually put in a larger cell with a number of women, but I know that he was put in women's clothes. He looked like a cis man. He had a beard. It was a total humiliation for him, and he's one of the reasons why we now have searches that you can choose which sex of policeman will search you. Misgendering, with COVID-19, everything goes over the phone. I don't really know what it was at the division before, because I was never there when somebody got arrested and was at the division, but I know that during COVID-19, misgendering and other harassment, it happens regularly with transgender people, especially with Black and Indigenous trans people and trans and two-spirited people. I've talked to a couple of friends of mine who are court officers to see what the best way is to stop this for your client. The first thing that you need to do is when you have somebody on the phone from the division who's going to put you through to the court officer liaison, talk to them about your client, make sure that they know what the right gender is, what the right pronouns are, and make sure that you ask them to correct their colleagues. It's not a fun thing to do for court officers because there's a difference in power with regular police, but to be a good lawyer for your transgender client, especially for your Black and Indigenous trans client, you have to talk to the court officer liaison about misgendering and about everything else. Usually the silicone packers and anything that trans women might use and might wear will be taken away. That will be a traumatizing experience on top of all that came before.
Freddie, I'm sorry that I have to interrupt, but you're already over the time.
Oh, am I? Okay.
So if you just can wrap up and then we'll go to the question and answer period.
So who to talk to at the division is go to the supervisor, go to the location administrator. In jails, it's a different kettle of fish. There's the option of an ombudsman, but the best thing to do is to go through either duty counsel who is at the jail or through the prisoners' rights organizations. There are two, Paysan and the Toronto Prisoners' Rights Project. Okay, my colleagues have already talked to what can you not ask, what should you ask? Always ask what pronouns they want to use, when they want to use it. Are they comfortable speaking up for themselves, or do you as a lawyer need to speak up for them? What not to ask ever is whether what their genitals are, whether they're having operations, except if it's relevant, because that's why they have committed or are accused of committing a certain offense. One of the things that happened with, I'm sorry, I'm gonna go over time. This is just too important. I'll speak as quickly as I can. COVID-19 saw a spike in arrests of female to male transgender people, both Indigenous, Black, and white transgender female to males. We don't know why that was. What Monica already said is that a lot of them moved out of the shelter system. About 40% of youth on the street are trans or two-spirited. The first comment is about officer in charge, and sometimes part of the disclosure will show what the officer in charge wants to happen, how they see the accused. My internet connection is unstable. Well, in these instances, both before COVID and after, officers in charge describe transgender accused in exactly the same way as Black and Indigenous people are described, as a menace to society, as a physical threat, as a sexual threat. So you have to look, if the officer in charge notes are in there, look at that and use that. Because if you don't, and it's happened in 2 of the cases that I worked on, when nobody said anything, the justice will take that sentiment and will not even knowingly take on a transphobic viewpoint of the accused and of their position in society. Thankfully for Indigenous people, we have Gladue reports. It's not enough, right? And one of the things that a group of trans health professionals is trying to do is start up research into a Gladue type report for two-spirited and transgender people. Oh yeah, so countless times I have not been able to speak up before because I was articling. My colleagues did not correct, nobody corrected the jail guard. The accused was constantly misgendered by the jail guard. The Crown didn't say anything, Duty Council didn't say anything, Justice didn't say anything. Nobody said anything. That's your duty. You have to speak up. You have to start the proceeding by saying these are the pronouns and this is the gender of my client. If somebody makes a mistake, immediately correct it, and at the end affirm what the gender and the pronouns are of your client. That's your duty. And the reason that it's so important to talk about gender and pronouns is because it's directly related to suicide and suicidal ideation and self-harm, especially for Black trans women, especially for Indigenous trans people and two-spirited people. After this all is done, I will send the statistics of suicide and mental health issues that you can use at sentencing and in appeal procedures. Your client will be not only upset by all the traumatic experience that I've just talked about, they will also be not in their right mind, body, because they're going through withdrawal of hormones, and that can lead to suicidality, it can lead to depression, that can make them incredibly anxious or angry. So make sure that you are aware of that and that you have maybe spoken to them beforehand about medication. It's absolutely impossible to get, at least in the bail, like before the bail hearing, to get medication to your clients if they are at Vanier or South Detention Center. It just isn't happening. It's not happening for HIV medication, and it's certainly not happening to estrogen or testosterone hormone treatment. It's not available. 2 of our clients were misgendered by the guard so much that it became a mental, they were at risk. They became a suicide risk. And when the jail sent them over to the hospital, what that means is that if it happens on a Friday, they're in jail for another 3 days. So the best thing you can do is to get the bail over as soon as possible. Make sure that the justice knows, well, hopefully you might have a judge one now and again, but very likely not, that the justice knows our communities do not have access to family. So if you're asking for sureties, it's not gonna happen most of the time. It's just not there. And the friends that we have in the trans community, especially if you're sex workers or if you are living with a dependency on drugs, your friends and your colleagues are not gonna be sureties that the justice will wanna approve. That's another reason why we need to have a Gladue type report for trans people, two-spirited people, especially focused on that. I'm almost done. One of the worst things for trans women and trans men as well, our trans men were sent to the male prison at first, but due to the misgendering and the harassment by the guards and the other inmates, they're usually sent to the to Vanier after a couple of days, which is also not perfect. At the detention center, they will face humiliation by the prison guards, even though they have had sensitivity training year after year after year. It's just the culture at the moment. What can you do apart from trying to find a good manager that you can talk to? Duty council at the jail will have good contacts at the jail. If there is a need to talk to somebody, do it through duty council. Try the Prisoners Action Network or the Prisoners' Rights Project. You could try the ombudsperson, but that's a long-term project. And the same thing with the human rights complaints. It's a long delay because of the gutting of the tribunal. My last two slides, and it'll take 2 minutes. What can you do to be a good colleague to your trans person? Use our pronouns often. Don't just use pronouns. Show us that you know who we are. On your lunch break, Google Two-Spirit, Google pronouns, Google anything you can think of, and talk to us, because most of us are open. Thirdly, correct pronouns if other people misgender them. What also helped at Scarborough is that people talk to clerks, interpreters, COs for you. So offer that to the trans colleague. And fifthly, when J.K. Rowling lashes out again, this is kind of a joke. It's not that funny. Bring them donuts and coffee. Everybody is leaving. Oh well.
I don't think people are leaving, Freddie. It's just we didn't want to distract from your presentation. So
okay. The things, so those are the good things that you can do, and they're very easy. The things that you absolutely should not say, and these have all been said to me at Scarborough, at College Park, in the family law office. Don't ask me what my genitals are. Don't ask me what my traumas are. Don't ask me if I have sexual trauma. Don't ask me if I was raped. Don't tell trans women, and especially not Indigenous trans people and Two-Spirited, don't tell them that they are what is wrong in the world. If your holy book says what we do and who we love is not good, keep it to yourself. It's not a workplace conversation. And when I talk about colleagues, I talk about lawyers in the duty council office. I talk about crowns. I talk about court officers who are my friends and colleagues, clerks and translators, all of them. It was a really, really hard time as a trans person fighting against all that and not having backup half of the time. I had an amazing principal at College Park, Aaron Rinsler, and an amazing person at the union. That's the only reason that I got through, because I wouldn't have made it without both of them. And that's not okay. Two other things that happened is that people tell you that it's your fault that you're harassed in the washroom. If you only have better energy or smile, you'll not be harassed. That's simply not true. That's complete BS. If you ever ask a trans colleague what their life is like, if you ask a Black court clerk who's trans what their life is like, you can never answer with, your story made me feel uncomfortable. That's it. And I want to thank Monica for her great leadership in all our communities. She means the world to us. And you're very lucky to have her here. Yeah.
Well, I think we're all lucky to have everyone here today to share their experiences and their knowledge from different aspects, from the different areas they work in. And Freddie, you and I have worked in the same courthouse, and I had no idea that was going on. Obviously, I mean, it's not something that you would you would advertise, but I find that shocking and horrifying that people.
It's not shocking. This is what trans people have every single day. And if you're Black or Indigenous or you're a migrant, it's 10 times worse.
And that, but I guess that, you know, from my privileged position, I would never have thought that council or people that work in the courthouse would treat you that way. It's surprising to me, and I apologize for that, but I had no idea. There are some, I'm sure people have questions, and there is one question that's already been asked, and I'd like to ask it to the group, and I'm sure all the panelists can weigh in, but it's specific to Kusha. There was a question a little bit earlier that was asked, and I'll just get to that. So Kusha, you mentioned that the least we can do is not misgender our clients. Often that places the onus on trans folk to introduce themselves with their pronouns. Do you think, and again, the other panelists can weigh in, that we should make a more deliberate effort to include our pronouns in our introductions with all clients and make it a more normalized practice to not assume the gender of anyone?
Absolutely, that would be a good practice for everyone, not just for trans people, but for everyone. Make everyone feel more comfortable. Like, what I usually do is like, I introduce myself. I am Kusha. I go by he or they. How about you? You know, and this creates a situation where the other person doesn't feel highlighted. Because a lot of the times it's like, you know, you're not asking. Like, I've been in a situation where like you're not asking anybody else, but you're asking me. That means you're putting me on the spotlight, and it's very uncomfortable. So this way, you're not necessarily putting everyone in the spotlight, and you know, you're just introducing yourself, and it's respectful, and yeah, it's mutual.
Does anyone else want to weigh in on that particular question? I've also got a question that I have that has been burning a hole in my brain. So, but if does anyone else have anything to say in relation to that particular issue? No. Okay, so
sorry.
Go ahead.
I want to repeat something that Keen from the Aboriginal Legal Services has told us at another time, is that for her, misgendering is the most important issue ever. Like sometimes we tell our friends, it's okay when you make a mistake, correct it and move on. Sometimes you can't move on, and you have to actually make a very specific apology to your colleague or your friend. And that's not me saying it, that's Keen from Aboriginal Legal Services, trans woman, a two-spirited trans woman.
Sorry, I just have to say, I have to go, but I'm happy to answer any questions particular to me by email.
Okay, great. And I'll ask another question, and I know that we're over time, and if people have to go, they have to go, but I wanted to ask about, Freddie, you in particular spoke about it. Monica, you also addressed this issue with respect to detention centers and essentially institutions. My understanding is that the Tobey's Act came into law in 2012, which requires the institutions to integrate transgendered persons into the general population unless there's some type of real safety issue. And so I believe, Freddie, when you mentioned that, was it Freddie or was it Monica who mentioned that
our female to male clients always end up at Vanier?
But it's not just that. One of you, I can't remember which one of you mentioned that there was a client that got isolated and was put in the hole. That was you, Monica, right? Just take yourself off mute.
Yeah, but that's not just one client. That's every person that goes, especially male to female that goes to Vanier. You are put in solitary or whatever, in the hole, they call it, until they assess you. And that can last up to 2 weeks. It could be the whole time you're in there. And this is problematic. So it really goes back to our bodies. And I think the fear of our genitals, either sexually assaulting a cisgendered woman or still recognizing that they're not really believing our genders and thinking that we're going to put harm onto cisgendered women. So a lot of women have denied. They said, listen, I'd rather go to a men's jail. You know, this is something we've been discussing. I even had a conversation with the corrections minister around this. And they went back and said it wasn't happening. And we know it's happening. It's still happening. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, well, it's like a safety protocol. We have to assess them, observe them before we can put them in general population. So sometimes they will put them in after their first court appearance, which can last a couple of weeks, a couple of months, depending. And, you know, this is problematic. You know what I mean? But what does it say about other women in the jail that it's okay to marginalize trans women, to go in the beliefs that trans women ain't women. You know what I mean? And I think staff need to be better educated. They're actually just starting because they were taking off a lot of trans women wear wigs. They were taking their hair off. You know what I mean? So they were doing everything possible to strip them of their identity. You know what I mean? So we really rallied to say, listen, you know, that is an essential part of who they are. You know, just like cutting off someone with dreadlocks, taking their hair off. Trans women's hair is part of their body, regardless if you grew it or if, you know what I mean. So some things are changing, but this whole putting trans women in isolation for weeks or months is just unacceptable. And then it pushes that trans woman to go to a men's jail where she's sexualized or she's dealing with abuse from men, you know what I mean? And then put in solitary too again, right? And then when because, you know, I've been to jail once and I've known that, you know, I wasn't there I was just there. And it was hard for, you know, people thinking that I have to perform for them. But, you know, we would ask for condoms and you go to the hole. So, you know, that's like an infringement of my health. You know what I mean? Like, I got to protect myself, and they do give condoms out in jail, but it's a way of, you know, first of all, dismissing that these things happen. It's a way of really, you know, putting a trans woman's life in, you know, in risk of health and death and violence and all these different things. So there's still a lot of work. And, you know, at first I was like, this is a great thing. We're making progress in the system, but it's internal issues that are creating more problems for trans women to integrate with other women and feel safe and supported. So, and they're going to go back and say it's not happening, but it's happening.
It's definitely happening. And in our community, everybody knows it's happening.
Right.
One of the things that doesn't have too much to do with criminal law, but trans women aren't accepted in the queer women's community.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from racism, immigration status, trans women are not accepted in the queer women's community. Trans men are not accepted in the cisgender gay men's community. We've just had a discussion on Facebook where a couple of gay men have said what they think about women faking to be men, gay men. And it's one of the vilest things that you read.
Yeah, you know, I'd love to say that we have a harmonious community, but there's still a lot of work. You know, I think, you know, and I came out in the 80s where trans women couldn't go into women's clubs. Trans women were just, you know what I mean? There was some, but it's still the same. It's just a little more tolerated, and you know what I mean? But we even had I had a lawyer work with me to write a letter to Vanier and to the West Detention, and they sent it back. They replied saying it's not happening. So, you know, and this is, you know, when we have numerous claims and then having a meeting with a very well-known Susan Gapka, which is very well-known, we're all sitting on this advisory around corrections, and, you know, things still ain't changing. So, you know, this is really problematic. You know, trans women are being put in jail just for being trans, for being sex workers, being homeless, you know what I mean? And to deal with even more layers of systemic violence and discrimination is really heartening to see, you know, so I think as lawyers, I think, you know, they need to really support trans people and advocate and really ask them what are their experiences like? You know what I mean? I think someone that has a bit of privilege could change something that, you know, maybe not not everything, but they can push to make the situation a little better.
One little thing that could make a huge difference for transgender people and two-spirited people is a set date court. Not as often having to go all the way to court to
Yeah.
just wait for 6 hours and nothing happens. Because not only does that take time out of people's lives, for transgender people, it means they have to go to a public building with a public washroom where they're not safe.
Mhm.
And if you look at the statistics of TransPulse Canada 2020, you can see that trans women and trans men and trans people and two-spirited people still avoid courts, avoid pubs, avoid train stations, avoid anything. Like the majority of our communities avoid public places.
Yeah, and just to top, I was sitting on the police liaison committee for the community in 99 to 2004. And like I said, I'm very well connected to the sex work community. And I also experienced sexual assault from one of the police. We brought forward 10 claims of the same officer. Very well-known officer. Their father was the head of police in the early 90s. There was an investigation. He was known to access bars, target and prey on trans women. He was dating a trans woman and actually married. And they still came back. Women put their lives on the risk. As we know, the police state, they run the streets. You know, you don't want to be tailing on police. It could be I can tell you stories of police running trans women out of the city, charging them consistently so they don't look credible, you know, making their lives hell. And, you know, out of all that, you know, they dismissed it by saying those allegations weren't true. And these were trans women of color that were immigrant. They were newcomers that were fearing to be deported. You know, so these systemic things are happening continuously to trans, two-spirited people, that they're not believed, they're dismissed, they're dealing with many forms of violence. I go to the 519, I was just there, I go there to do outreach. There's trans women of color that are dealing with mental health because of COVID.
Yeah.
And police are incarcerating them, handcuffing them, throwing them to the ground, taking them away for a couple of days because they are released because of no cause usually. But this is continuous. No one is supporting the community. No one is you know, out of all those people that were housed into hotels, why are we still seeing a large number of trans and two-spirited people still sleeping in that park? You know what I mean? I just don't understand what's going on systemically and how we're not supporting the most racialized and marginalized people in our communities. The 519 do a lot of great work. They've been very good with advocating, you know what I mean? But we're in a crisis right now. Trans women are experiencing the most. They're experiencing the most violence, policing, criminalization through this COVID, you know what I mean? And it's you know, and it's sad right now. It's really hard for me because I work at Maggie's. We kind of dismiss, we're not doing outreach, so I'm doing it through Trans Pride Toronto with limited resources. You know what I mean? We don't got a lot of funding. We really depend on donations and fundraising. You know, so also I think it's important to know that people like myself that start agencies that are racialized and Black and Indigenous, because I'm mixed, and trans, it's hard for me to get funding. They don't believe me, but I have to, you know, and this is something I've experienced in places. I work in many agencies where I've been saying I'm the aggressive Black woman because I speak out. I'm a manager and I run a team and I got to watch how I talk to them. If I discipline them in a way that I'm the aggressor, you know, these are constant for a lot of trans women, especially in roles that, you know what I mean? So we're lucky to have these places in our society, but we have to be silent. We can't stay when there's injustices. We can't stay when when we see clearly transphobia. You know what I mean? When I experience transphobia, I can't call it out. You know what I mean? And we're most often not believed, and that's why I would like to see a lot more, trans and non-binary lawyers in the forefront, people of color, even in agencies, giving trans people that opportunity to be in roles that could make change and empower communities. So, yeah.
Well, you provided everyone with a lot to think about,
Okay.
a lot of
Okay.
information, which is great. And you all have. And I want to thank all the panelists for joining us today and really, I think, opening a lot of eyes. I've been reading some of the chats on the side, and people, first of all, are very grateful for the information and the panel today, but also realizing how much they don't know on this issue and how they need to educate themselves. So this is a good start. So I just want to thank everybody. And I don't think we have any more questions at this point.
Just add thing.
Sure.
So anyone can actually get a hold of me through my email. Maggie's is more than happy to do workshops on best practices, working with sex workers. I do trans one-on-one workshops. So reach out. You have questions, I'll be more than happy to support you. So
Monica,
yeah.
There's a No Pride in Policing is trying to get a hold of you.
Oh yeah.
They've asked me to contact you right here.
No, they want me to do some rallies, but I'm immune compromised. I'm diabetic. So I really got to be mindful going into the crowd.
Available.
Yeah.
Can I just? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Adit, I just also want to thank the panelists and thank everybody for allowing me to use the platform that we have. We raise some awareness. I appreciate the stories that have been shared. And it just goes to show many amongst the bar that there's a lot for us to learn. And I hope that we can ensure that through education, that we on this side of the bar start to learn a little more and understand a little more. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Everyone have a great evening and stay safe and stay well.
Okay.
Bye.
I want to thank all the participants as well who were able to hang in there during our 27 minutes of trying to figure out how this technology works. I truly appreciate it. It only goes to show that the content that we were delivering today is so well, it's needed to be shared. And so I thank everybody for hanging in there. We have another Garage Series, as I said, coming up the second week of July. We're featuring everybody from the, so we had talked about the concept, and I thank Freddie for this, about what we needed more in court to help people, to help marginalized people, to help trans people, to help everybody, is because everybody has a story to tell, that we need to work on enhanced pre-sentence reports. And so there has been funding for the nonprofit organization, and it's coming. I just had a brain freeze. Sentencing and Parole Project, Sentencing and Parole Project, and I think it's sentencingproject.ca. Anyways, if you search it, they're now taking the lead. And if we learn from them and we're able to share the information that they have and be able to share it with other communities, so that when a person is before a court, that they are an individual. They're just not a line on a docket. And that this inhumane process that we have, that we're using, we have to humanize it the best that we can. And if we're able to help share that information, then again, it's one more step that we're taking to hope to change the criminal justice system for the better. I thank everybody again for joining us, and I wish everybody good health and stay well through this
Happy Pride.
time. And happy Pride, everybody.
Pride. Happy Pride, Edith,
You
everyone.
too.
Bye, Monica. Bye, Keith.
Okay, bye
Bye.
all.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, Senior. Thank you. Bye, Keith.